Okay, apparently we're recording. Presenter view. Okay. So let's see. Go back. Work with it. So thank you very much, Andrew. Appreciate the opportunity. Uh, I finally made it. I finally made it. I was actually invited to come and speak March 2020. Anyone remember what was going on March 2020? Um, yeah, we don't want to remember anymore. So I'll make a long, boring story as short as possible. Uh, I'm a uh, I'm a heart transplant recipient. So in the back, where'd that go there? Oh, there. Thank you very much. So when I was 18 years old, long story short, I was biking on the golf course and I couldn't breathe anymore. And I ended up at the doctor's office, did a whole bunch of tests. The doctor's like, yeah, basically you got 6 months to live unless you get a life-saving heart transplant. Okay, no problem. But because of that, I have to go on immunotherapy. So I take immunotherapy for the rest of my life to make sure that my body does not suppress my new organ or try to reject my new organ. So when you get a new novel virus that comes along, my doctors basically told me to run and hide. So unfortunately, I had to pull the plug on you guys 5 years ago. So I do apologize. And I almost didn't make it again today because I was in the Quebec conference last week. And it was a Tuesday night. It was the gala evening, and they're handing out the awards to superintendents. And all of a sudden, I'm like, who turned the AC on in here? Why is it freezing in here? Well, the next day I had a fever, so I caught the flu. So I called Darren. Turns out he had the flu the same time I had the flu. It was on Monday. I'm like, Darren, I'm touch and go here. So if I cough a couple times, I do apologize, but I am recovering from the flu. So that being said, let's get into this. I do have about an hour um, to cover about 376 slides. So let's do our best. Okay, slide number 1. Okay, we're going to cover this. All right. So over the next hour or so, really just going to give you a quick little Belchim update. Then we're going to talk about what I just call getting to the roots of the problem. And if time permits, talk about some alternative disease management and a little bit of snow mold, our Calero product. Okay, so first things first, I guarantee you guys noticed my horrendous jacket, okay? But I guarantee you didn't notice we have a new logo. So it's supposed to match, okay? So new name, new logo. Why? Long story short, we merged with one of our sister companies called Certus. So if you go to Europe, we're actually called Certus Belchim. So same font, same logo, but there's no Certus presence in Canada. So to avoid any kind of market confusion, we just decided to stay Belchim Canada. Certus, if it's not the biggest, it's like the second biggest distributor of biological products for the ag business. Okay, so at the end of the day, what does it mean? All it really means is it's business as usual, just new name, new logo, and I have a new jacket. So here you go. Here's the team. So I believe you guys know this guy here, the big bear. There's Billy. He takes care of the East Coast. So long story. The short story behind the jacket was, new logo. Barry's the marketing guy, and he's like, "Hey, let's get matching jackets. It'll match the booth and everything for the CGSA show." Unfortunately, I had a personal conflict, so I wasn't able to go to the show. And I remember when I showed the jacket to my wife, she was like, "That's a horrendous jacket. You really gonna wear that?" I'm like, "Hey, all I know is that when a 6'3", 230-pound guy tells me to wear a turquoise jacket, I wear it." But I wasn't able to go, and I felt bad for the guys. So Barry was like, "When you go to Winnipeg, you better wear that jacket because you didn't wear it at the CGSA shows." That's kind of the story behind the jacket. But in terms of our portfolio, nothing new from us this year. More of the same. So the products you've got to know over the last couple of years, we haven't lost anything either. So Disarm and Quicksilver are still in our portfolio of products. Okay, thought good way to get this presentation going would be just to get the wheels turning a little bit. What are we looking at here? It's okay. I get sent a lot of pictures, like, "Grover, I got this going on," and diagnosis by picture is really hard to do. But the point isn't to get the answer right. The point is just to kind of think. That's actually Pythian root dysfunction. It looks a lot like take-all patch. What's this? That's actually take-all patch. What's this? That's summer patch. And then this, pithy root rot. So at the end of the day, a lot of these things look very, very similar. And unfortunately, when we're seeing these symptoms here, it's really kind of too late. Okay. So I know Darren had asked me to talk about some root-borne issues today. And it's the common language I'm hearing a lot in my travels. I now live just outside of Toronto, don't boo me, okay? But I grew up in Montreal, so I cover the province of Quebec. So I go into Quebec, I do half of Ontario. Big Bear and I, we tag team Manitoba. I take care of Alberta. Every once in a while, I go into Saskatchewan. We tag team British Columbia. So it's a small little territory. But in our travels and talking to people, I'm hearing the same, like, we're starting to see way more of this. We're starting to see way more of this. We never used to. And so there's a whole lot of new things that are kind of being thrown at us. And I think a lot of it has to do with the extremes in our weather that we see. Okay. So let's just talk about getting to the roots of the problem. And I thought probably a great way to start it would be to talk about fungicide phytomobility. And I know, don't throw your phones at me. We're all sick and tired of talking about phytomobility, but I'm leading up to a point here. Phytomobility is really just a big word to describe how do fungicides move when they get into a plant. Okay, we have two types. We have our contacts; these can't get inside the plant, and we have our penetrants. And in our penetrants, we have three different types. We have the croppal penetrants, local penetrants, and systemic penetrants. What are we looking at here? This is vertical cross section of a leaf blade. We're all, excellent superintendents. So this is clearly fake grass, not POA, right? We don't grow POA. But this little red dot here, that's the fungicide deposit. So just imagine that's some fluazinam or chlorothalonil. It's a contact fungicide. Can't get into the plant, but wherever it comes into contact with that pathogen, whether it's mycelium or germinating spore, that's where you get control of the disease. These compounds bind high angle heat to thatch and organic matter. For that reason there is no amounts of water that you could put down after an application to drive that product into the soil. Not going to happen. Now, local penetrants. These can actually get in the plant. Local penetrants have what's called a translaminar effect, and they have an affinity for the waxy cuticle of the leaf blade. So gets into that waxy cuticle, starts to make its way into the plant. As it makes its way across, which is where you see that translaminar effect, when it's making its way across, wherever it comes into contact with the pathogen, that's where you're getting control. Okay. Important to remember, these fungicides, you can water them in to control some soil-borne pathogens, but they do not get taken up by the plant. The only way they can enter the plant is in the foliage there. So roots cannot pick up this material. What we call the true systemics, the systemic penetrants, are phosphonate or phosphate fungicides. So for us in Canada, legally, there's only two now, Fostrol Pro and Aliette, both excellent products. These are the only ones that are called ambimobile. Every once in a while, I like to throw in a big word to make it look like I'm really smart. So ambimobile just means it moves up and down in the plant. So these are the only, interestingly enough, the only compounds that can do that. So you can water it in, roots pick it up, goes to the leaf tip, or you can leave it on the foliage and gets absorbed by the leaves and makes its way down. And lastly, our croppal penetrants. Now, these are fungicides that follow the water gradient inside the plant. So it gets in the plant, makes its way towards the xylem, and moves up. These fungicides can be absorbed by three different areas of the plant: roots, crown, or the foliage. So you can water these guys in and get control of root-borne pathogens. An example of that would be our Disarm product, Renovo, and our Pantheon product. And here is a great picture that illustrates that difference in phytomobility. So here's that croppal penetrant I was talking about, and here's a local penetrant. So this is actually wheat, and it's been inoculated with powdery mildew. But in this area here, in this yellow box, is the only area where fungicide was placed on that blade. Notice the difference in the protection versus a local penetrant, because it got into the xylem, provided protection to the leaf tip, versus a local. Okay, it did not. I'm not saying one is better than the other. Just saying they're different, and it's good to know that difference. So I tried to, in this slide here, represent what a profile of a golf green would look like. You got your green material, foliage, everything, and then your soil, your root zone profile there. What do we notice on this slide? 3 products have a couple things in common, other than the fact that they're Belchim products, and one is a bit of an outlier. Which one would be the outlier? That's right, I heard it. Someone said it's chlorothalonil. As I mentioned before, contact fungicide binds highly detached organic matter. There's no amount of water you can put out to try to dry that product in the soil to clean up our root zone issues. Whereas these ones here, they do. The other thing that these 3 have in common, they're the types of fungicides that can move up in the plant. So the question that I have, especially if we're dealing with root-borne pathogens, and especially when we're going through periods of extreme weather, if you're going to spend $200, $300, $400, and sometimes up to $800 an acre, why are you only taking advantage of this part of the label? Why aren't you taking advantage of that part of the label? Why aren't we watering these compounds in, maximizing our bang for our buck, controlling some of this, take care of those root-borne pathogens, your roots get stronger, you get a stronger plant, and the roots pick up the fungicide, and the fungicide moves up in the plant and provides protection for all of that. From what I see, superintendents, this is a simple thing that I think you can add to your program, watering a lot of these materials, especially the ones that move up in the plant. Take advantage of that phytomobility. The superintendents that I see that take advantage of that, water their materials in, they seem to get through those periods of extreme weather that much easier. I had a couple of superintendents last year, unfortunately, a lot of their greens not built properly, poor drainage, basically growing grass on top of a bathtub. It makes it really challenging when you have extreme heat and lots of extreme rain, big rain events. So this is something I think you can easily incorporate your program to help maximize the value of these products. Now you might be thinking, okay, sounds like a great idea. Where can I get that information? We built the frac chart in 2018. Why? Well, the PMRA was talking about getting rid of chlorothalonil and iprodion, and I have a lot of superintendents ask me, Grover, we talk a lot about rotating, but the reality is I'm not quite sure how to do it. I go online, next thing I know, I'm on the Ohio Buckeye Turf website. What the hell is Balaton? What's torque? So that's when we had the epiphany. Let's make a Canadian frac sheet. So this is just Canadian products. The way it works is it's all the fungicide families, the frac groups. So everything's based or grouped as per their frac group. What we decided to add a couple of years ago was, see right here, like our Pantheon product, tells you right there the phytomobility. So that's something that we added to that chart. So if you're interested in knowing, hey, I kind of want to get a program going, and especially make sure I'm utilizing some of these products throughout that heat of the summer, and I just want to know which ones are the xylem mobile ones, you can reference our chart and that information is there for you. So you can find that at belchimturf.ca. Brand new 2025 version is right there, okay? So water these things in. Now, the most frequently asked questions I get after I recommend that someone waters in these materials is, how much water? Is there such a thing as too much water? I'm afraid of blowing this fungicide past the root zone, past the target. Do you think a wetting agent will help dry that product further down and help me trying to control these root-borne pathogens? So I want to quickly talk about some fungicide movement in root zones, and these pictures were, or these slides, I should say, were shared with us from our friends at NC State. So Dr. Kearns, want to thank him. So here we look, profile, the green. So typically, a lot of these recommendations for how much water You read labels, it can kind of be all over the place, but typically speaking, if you're going after a foliar pathogen, you're looking at 1 to 2 gallons, sometimes even less. With some contacts, you can go below that, get good control. When we're talking about uh, pathogens are going after the crown, probably want to go up more to 2 to 3 gallons of water. Make sure you get that material there and protect the crown. And then lastly, root, root-borne pathogens are in the roots or in the root area in the soil. So you really have to try to deliver that product down below. So, and again, recommendations for how much water to put out there are all over the place. You can get from anywhere from apply in 5 gallons per thousand or with 1/8 of an inch of irrigation. Anyone have any idea how much water is 1/8 of an inch of irrigation? It's like 76 gallons per thousand. So you want to talk about quite the spread. It's like I apply it in 5 gallons or 76, So I would say make sure you're at minimum 5 gallons to get these products down. Ideal scenario would be to have 4-gallon nozzles. Anyone in here have 4-gallon nozzles for their spray rig? Yeah, I didn't think so. Like finding a superintendent with 4-gallon nozzles, I hear about them.
Well, yeah, still having a pump that you can put it out.
Yeah, that's right. Superintendents with 4-gallon nozzles are like unicorns. You hear about them, but you never quite see them. There's a couple superintendents out there. Delivering water through your spray rig is way more uniform than relying on your irrigation system to water it in after. So the more this material you can deliver through your spray rig, it's that much better. So my recommendation is always, if you can, with 4-gallon nozzles, go out there with 4-gallon nozzles and turn just a couple spins of the head to try to deliver that material as far down as you can. Not everyone can do that. So then my next recommendation is, well, get your 2-gallon nozzles, calibrate your spray rig to go up twice, go over your greens twice. So you put out 4 gallons, and most people look at me like I got two heads. Like, go over my greens twice. What's wrong with you? So usually you kind of settle on, okay, 2-gallon nozzles and then water it. But important to choose the right nozzle. So, think about what's my target. Okay, so fungicides have what's known as a KOC value. It's basically just a unit of measure which expresses how mobile is a fungicide. Most of our fungicides are either moderately immobile to highly immobile, meaning it's hard to get these products to move once they're in the soil. Okay, so if you look at some of these values, so something like dicamba is very low. If you were to water in dicamba, the herbicide, that would leak through your soil. But something even like, let's see here, where was it? I saw it. Mefenoxam at 163. Even if you're comparing it to some of these other numbers, like 163 is still relatively immobile. Okay. So Dr. Curran did some work looking at myclobutanol, which was a DMI. And in these little lysimeters, these sand lysimeters, well, sand, they're like USGA spec sand. You put in there 90% sand, 10% peat. And he put like a radioisotope on it to be able to track its movement through these lysimeters. So looking at applying that DMI fungicide, then no water after, 1/8 of an inch, 1/4, half, and 1 inch. Now notice in that top 1 inch, even after you threw 1 inch of water, 50% of that fungicide, it was still tied up at the top edge. So it's really hard to get these materials down in the soil. I think a lot of superintendents, myself included back in the day, they always think that's a lot. Like you can't put that much water, I'm gonna lose my product. It's really hard to get these products down. And no fungicide was detected at all below 4 inches. Physically impossible to deliver this material below 4 inches. So it gets stuck up the top. So 50% of it gets stuck in the top inch, in the top 1 to 2 inch level on those lysimeters. Then you can start to see a little bit of difference between, here's 1 inch of water, there's the control. Here's 1/8 of an inch. So at 1/8 of an inch, you're getting about 30% of the material down. Then look at there, 2 to 3 inches down, you basically don't have much material left anymore. And that's where a lot of that 1/8 of an inch recommendation work comes from. With 1/8 of an inch of water, you can get quite a bit in the top 2 inches. So as long as you can get material 2 inches down, that's pretty good. Most of our roots are in that top 2 inches. Here was some turf inoculated with summer patch. So here's a non-inoculated. Here is inoculated. Put azoxystrobin in to protect it. So here was summer patch. It's a root-borne pathogen. No irrigation after the fungicide. Notice how it didn't provide any protection. A tenth of an inch, an eighth of an inch, and a quarter of an inch. Notice how more water was put out, the more protection you got because he was able to deliver that fungicide even lower to protect those roots and control that fungus that's found deep below. So he did more work looking at product like our Segway product, very very strong on pithing diseases, especially root rot, root dysfunction. Okay, it's moderately immobile as well. You see that KOC value there. But what's interesting to note is he wanted to look at the difference between an eighth of an inch of water and a quarter of an inch of water immediately after application versus, I'm too busy to turn on my sprinklers right now. Let me wait 6 hours. So you wait 6 hours. So you wait 6 hours, an eighth of an inch, a quarter of an inch. Okay. Now, if we focus on the blue bars, these blue bars is the top 2.5 centimeters in the soil. So notice how much product he was able to get in the top 2 centimeters of the soil. If it's watered in immediately, these two different water volumes. So you may think, I don't have the time to water it in now, but I'll wait 6 hours. I'll just put that much more water out 6 hours later. We'll look at an eighth of an inch 6 hours later versus a quarter of an inch. Not a whole lot of a difference at all, but a big difference between these blue bars there. So if we're dealing with root-borne pathogens, we want to get a lot of this material down as soon as possible. So waiting 6 hours and putting out more water will help you out. So if you can see the downward trend here, if you can think about it, when are you making these applications? It's like 6 in the morning. Waiting 6 hours, that's lunchtime. Are you running your heads at lunchtime? No, the golf course is packed. So really you're going to, I'll water it at night. Too late. It's got to be done immediately. Will a wetting agent help? The answer is yes, wetting agent will help. Okay. Again, on these little lysimeters, see here the top edge. So no soil surfactant. If you add a soil surfactant, it helped to drive the product down. So less was picked up in the top inch because there's more down below. Okay. You can see 2 to 3 inches down, no soil surfactant, and 3 different soil surfactants. So it did help to drive that product down. There was no difference amongst those 3 soil surfactants. But one other thing that was key though is it takes about 2 weeks to work, meaning that you have to have positive flow beforehand. So if your first wetting agent application is going to be with a fungicide and you're hoping it's going to help move the fungicide down, you really have to be already on a program a couple of weeks before, just have that positive flow. So that first application is not going to help, but it will help with subsequent application. So yes, you can definitely add that to your fungicide tank to help move the product down.
Hey, Grover, just a question here. So the night before that, you're going to be spraying one of these products. Is it a good idea to really soak down the ground first to help it drive it down a little bit more?
Well, can't hurt. I mean, as long as you don't saturate the soils. If you got saturated soils and the water's not moving, then you spray and you try that causes a problem. But it doesn't help. It wouldn't hurt at all. Again, as long as you're not saturated. As long as you have positive flow is what's important. All right. Any questions on that? No, pretty straightforward. Okay, so I want to talk about 2 of our products that these 2 products, the Disarm and Segway, they can be used anytime throughout the season in any way you kind of want to use them. But this is just one of the ways in which we recommend that you use them. It's together in the spring, and we call it our complete spring protection because I think this picture is kind of fitting as to what springtime can be like for you superintendents. It's usually a time of year where you're really busy, you're running around trying to get the golf course open, you're distracted, maybe Mother Nature is not cooperative. It looks like that out there. So unfortunately, when you got all that going on, a lot of these diseases are starting to wake up and they're starting to be active. And this is when a lot of our root-borne issues are starting to wake up and they're starting to infect our plant. So the symptomology is not being expressed until it's too late, until the heat of the season. because your roots have died back and your plant's not able to, live throughout that heat. Okay. So these things are all starting to wake up. So the first product we want to talk about that we throw in the tank would be Disarm at 11.5 mils. Very strong on these diseases that you see here. So it's one of these products that is xylem mobile. So it does move up in the plant. So enters the plant, goes up through the xylem, wherever it comes into contact with pathogen, you get control. You may have seen this before. Work was done in the lab because fluoxystrobin within that group, it's a strobilurin. It's a group 11 fungicide. Within that group, it's known to be the most systemic. And this picture just taken out of an agar plate shows that, despite the fact that these two leaf blades were just treated with a fungicide at the base of the leaf, you see more equal distribution of the product in that agar plate versus a competitor here. Okay, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's different. And that's where you may see some of our, or may have seen our marketing halo protection. It just comes from that. But the differentiators of the product is it's rain fast in 15 minutes. Gets in the plant in 15 minutes. When may that be of use to you? When you're taking that tour in the morning, you're looking at your greens, and all of a sudden, whoa, you got some active disease, and you want to shut that down ASAP. This may be a good option because it's in the plant within 15 minutes, cleaning things up. The other thing I just mentioned was, and then also, Darren, I'm sure you get those phone calls. Hey, Darren, I just put out that product and it rained. Am I still good? Well, that kind of takes that worry out because if you know after 15 minutes it's in the plant. But the other reason I share this is if it's getting into the plant within 15 minutes and I'm targeting root-borne issues, my soil, what does this mean? I better be watering this in within 15 minutes or else it's getting into the foliage and not going where it needs to go. Okay, it's very broad spectrum on the label. We have 12 diseases. It actually controls more than 12, but we only have 12 on the labeled, from anthracnose all the way down. If we look at this report, I'm sure we've all seen this, what we call the Vincelli report. Okay, I thought I'd do something different for you guys because I know I'm getting tired of looking at bar graphs all the time. So I'm like, let me throw a spider web at these guys and make it different. Okay, the same concept. So in this report, all these fungicides are graded from 1 to 4, 1 being less efficacious, 4 being the best. Middle of the spider web is a 0, and each rung of the spider web is a half point. So we get to 3 here, 3.5, and 4. So if I throw Disarm in there, that's what that looks like. So you can see it's pretty strong on most of these diseases here. One thing that is noteworthy is on pink snowball microdochium patch, it is, if you look at that report, it is the only strobilurin, only group 11 fungicide that gets a 4 out of 4 star rating on microdochium patch. So very strong on that. If I throw in a competitive strobilurin, it's not Pac-Man, but I throw in a competitive strobilurin, it kind of shows the differences or the differentiators of Disarm. Its strength on microdochium patch, pink snowball, and dollar spot. Not all strobilurins give you control of dollar spot. Disarm is one of them. So research has been done. So here's the high rated Disarm. So for the work that we've done with this material, I would say in low to moderate dollar spot pressure, it's a decent 21-day product. Moderate to high, that's when I'm either putting something else in the tank with it or maybe choosing another option if I'm just targeting dollar spot. But as a strobilurin, as we've lost chemistries, this is a pretty good rotational tool. You can rotate to this for dollar spot control, or at the very least, if dollar spot's not your main pathogen you're going after, as a secondary or tertiary pathogen, you can know that when you're using Disarm, you're getting good control of dollar spot. Okay. Summer patch. Darren had asked me to quickly talk about summer patch. You started to see a bit of summer patch here. Work was done at Rutgers with Dr. Clark at high rate of Disarm, preventatively, works as well as all the other industry standards that you've gotten to know over the years. So very good, very strong at summer patch. Typically, when we talk about summer patch, what's it going after? It goes after POA, right? That's our POA disease. It will go after Kentucky bluegrass, white fescues, but it's not really an issue for us. Rarely, occasionally can go after or infect bank grass, but usually that's when your bank grass is almost tapping out. It's been a long, long summer. It's on its last couple breaths of air. So summer patch can affect bank grass, but we're typically talking poor greens. And usually it's affecting compacted and poorly drained soils. That's where you see it. Now, in terms of control, standard recommendation has always been to monitor your soil temperatures. And when your soil temperature is at that 2-inch depth, from anywhere from 3 to 7 consecutive days, reaches 18 degrees C or 65 degrees Fahrenheit, that's when that pathogen's kind of waking up from its winter slumber and it's starting to affect roots. You're not seeing it because it's below ground, but that's when it's starting its infection cycle. So the recommendation has been to make an application there. But what is interesting to note about summer patch is it wakes up at 18 and then it hangs around for the rest of the year. It's likely there, even when it's 30, 32 degrees, it's still active. So it could be infecting that plant throughout the majority of the summer. So I do know some superintendents that have struggled with summer patch. I remember one telling me, I don't care what I do, come Canada Day, I lose my greens. And then it's like, a couple days after Canada Day, boom, lost his greens to summer patch. But ended up putting this superintendent on a program. So monthly sprays, where every once a month, driving material down in the soil, cleaning things up. And ever since that superintendent's been doing that, has really been able to manage summer patch. So for those of you, this is a big concern. If just that one preventative spray in the spring isn't enough, I'll say get on some kind of a monthly program and water it in. That's just Kentucky bluegrass that got nuked. But as all things, it's always best to send a sample to the lab, give you a positive. If you're not quite sure what you're seeing and you just want to know what you're treating, you see that runner hyphae on the roots. So that's the positive ID there. Other things that you can help you manage summer patch, ammonium sulfate, a lot of work has been done. 2/10 of a ton of ammonium sulfate, all those acidifying fertilizers. I do last year in the Ottawa area. A lot of guys are having problems. Their fairways getting a lot of summer patch. And so it's cost prohibitive to go out with the fungicide on fairways. So 2/10 of a pound of ammonium sulfate, water that in. Fairways actually works really well. Even that, spike your fungicide tank with 2/10 of a pound, or if you're maybe a little too lush, you think you got a little bit too much nitrogen out there, maybe rain it back to 1/10 of a pound, but that acidifying effect will definitely help. And two would be, it's gone. So would be, we typically go after these root-borne issues, these pathogens, with the same chemistries. Group 3, Group 11, Group 3, Group 11. Well, thiophanate methyl, which is a Group 1, unfortunately, it's not yet registered for summer patch, but it provides excellent control. So if you've been throwing out the same chemistries at pathogen and you don't seem to be getting good control, something different, a different mode of action may work really, really well. Okay, that's summer patch in a nutshell. Take call patch. We've done research with that here at the Chicago District Golf Association. Again, high rate, working as well as other industry standards here. So you can use it with confidence. If take call patch is an issue and you want to switch some things up, you could always use Disarm preventatively. It's strong, as good as all the other industry standards. Okay. When we talk about take call patch, we're really talking about bent grass. Take call patch is pretty much specifically going after bent grass. Here's a classic sign. You got the inside of that patch, pole annular growing there. I think you guys could probably tell me more about take all patch, and I can tell you, but soils or the rhizosphere, we have high pH. So the use of acidifying fertilizers, ammonium sulfate, manganese. Some guys will go out with 2 pounds elemental manganese per acre in the spring just to try to acidify things. Things to keep in mind is your irrigation water. If you get that tested, what's the the pH of irrigation water? Even your top dressing sand that you're using, what's the acidity of your top dressing sand? That could potentially be contributing to some of the problems you're having. And I'm always amazed. I get pictures from guys in Alberta that take all patch. I see there, it's unbelievable. But in terms of treatment, fungicide treatment, take all patch, slightly different to summer patch. Wakes up a little bit earlier, but just like me, likes to try to get to bed a little bit earlier. Doesn't stay active throughout the balance of the year. It's really active in between about maybe even 10 degrees, let's say 10 to 18 degrees. So above 18 degrees, taps out, I don't like these hot soils. I'm going to bed. So really important that you make those applications spring and fall when the soil temperatures are between 10 to 18. If you go above that, it's too late. Pathogens are already dormant. And that's the other thing to always remember with fungicides is for fungicide to work, the pathogen has to be active. If the pathogen is not active, it's like trying to spray an insecticide on the egg, an insect egg. You can't drive that insecticide inside an egg. It's not going to do anything. So key with fungicides is pathogens have to be active for them to work. So if your soil temperatures are 30 degrees and you're thinking, I want to be proactive, let me put out a fungicide, I'll water it in, control some take-all patch. You're not doing anything because your take-all patch is on. Okay. And sending samples to the lab, one tip I have heard is because you can always find some underlying level of the take-all patch pathogen in your soils. So a good idea is to send 2 samples. So take 1 cup cutter from where you're having an issue. So let's say you're looking at this, you take a sample, half of the blighted area and half of good turf, and then just send a cup cutter from a nice part of your green. So that you can tell the difference, like how much take-all patch is in the sample in that plug that's nice and healthy versus how much is in the sample that's where the grass is affected. Because the joke, when we send things to the lab with Guelph was it always comes back as take-all patch because you can always find take-all patch. But how much more take-all patch do you have in there? So that's a little tip. This is what I see more though. My experience with take-all patch, it looks more like that. Come in one day and you just start to see like a white patch, and over time it gets purple. You get the fuse look like that, and then that's under the microscope, that ectotrophic runner I found. John Kaminsky did some work a long time ago now when he was at Connecticut looking at take-all patch curative control. So really fast, this trial, these were the application days when he went down with his fungicide. Interesting to note, though, here's a thiophanate methyl treated, a plot, okay? It was designated for thiophanate methyl. So this plot started off with more take-all patch. 2 applications of all these fungicides, various fungicides. And by this point here, the plot that actually started out with the most take-all patch had the least. It was treated with thiophanate methyl. Again, just a different mode of action. Here's a rain event, and you see that symptomology get expressed again, which is pretty standard for root-borne issues. After you get a rain, things kind of bounce back. But to look at it in a different way, sorry, I said I wouldn't do bar graphs, but here's a bar graph. But here was, so which were the better treatments? Headway, which is a mix of propiconazole and azoxystrobin, thiophanate methyl, and there's azoxystrobin, propiconazole. So as efficacious as some of the standards that you're used to, it's just a different mode of action, okay? So the second product I want to talk about would be Segway. Rate range of 14.3 to 26 mils. Throwing that in the tank. It's a group 21. Pythium root dysfunction. I'm hearing much more about Pythium root dysfunction. It's funny, when we got this product, I remember thinking, it's known to be the strongest Pythium product, but we don't see much Pythium. Next thing I know, like Pythium root rot and root dysfunction is exploding everywhere. But what does this look like? It looks so much like take-all patch. So Pythium root dysfunction basically infects bed grass only. It's not going after POA. It's called a tournament disease because typically after you've really stressed out your greens, that's when you start to see some of this flare up because you've lost a lot of those roots. It's infecting the plant the same time your take-all pathogen is infecting the plant. So in that spring, it can go from, I would say, anywhere from 50, 55 to 70, 75 degrees. That's when it's infecting the plant. Okay. So that's why we recommend Segway in the tank at the same time. If you're going out there treating for take-all patch, put some Segway in there at the same time, just something less for you to worry about. Because again, if you're looking at this, too late. What was it Dr. Vargas used to say? Like a fungicide can take care of fungus, but it's not going to bring back dead grass. Okay, they're not that good. This is another look at it, at the diffuse pattern of root dysfunction. Something that may be a help for you to diagnose in the field, really hard to do, is root dysfunction affects the root hairs of the plant. Basically eliminates the root hairs of the plant. So if you're trying to take a sample out, the cup cutter, you have all the sand that just falls right down. Why? Well, despite the fact that the roots are nice and white, they look healthy, there's no root hairs on it, so it can't hold on to sand. So this picture just denoting here's an uninfected versus infected. This is holding on to a little bit more root hair, sand because it got more root hairs. Really hard to do, but in some instances you can notice that. Best way to diagnose it though, send it to the lab. Look for those zoospores. That'll give you a positive ID. Pythium root rot. Pythium root rot infects both POA and bent. So it's not selective, both POA and bent. When is it active? Unfortunately, it's active from as low as 3 to 4 degrees all the way up to 30 degrees. Always active. And the interesting thing about these root rots is there's many different Pythium species that can cause just a general root rot. So it's not just one specific Pythium root rot species. It needs a bath to swim in. So it really just needs moisture. So as long as there's a lot of moisture, maybe you haven't watered in your wetting agent properly, so you're holding on to a lot of moisture in the top, or poorly drained soils, or it's raining a lot, whatever that reason is, really wet conditions really help out this pathogen here. And again, when you have it, you can treat it curatively, but it's really hard to chase in your tail. So these things, all these root-borne pathogens, always best. An ounce of prevention is really worth a pound of cure. Here's another look at it. Again, get it down to the lab. You gotta get a positive ID with those zoospores. Triangle this time for you. Okay, this is a Vincelli report. How does segue work on these diseases, or how does it form? So here's Pythium blight, root rot, root dysfunction. You throw segue in there, and it's very strong. When we go down to the field days at Rutgers every year, it's always the top performing product. So I'm extremely strong on root rot, and at least a 3 on dysfunction, a 3.5 on Pythium blight. And here would be a competitive Pythium product here in Canada, and the third product. So it just shows you the strength of segue. This is the most frequently asked question I get regarding segue. When can I use it? Is it preventative or curative? The answer is yes. You can use it at any time because it's very strong. It will shut down that pathogen's growth anytime throughout its development. Again, though, you would want to use it best you be on a preventative program. Okay, so this is what we recommend here. 11.5 mils disarm, 14.3 segue. Do it in the spring. If you're going after take-all patch at 12 degrees, that's when you make this application. If it's summer patch, you got more POA at 18 degrees. That's just a really good way to start off the season because all pathogens that affect turf are taken care of with this mix. You're not leaving anything unprotected. It's just a good insurance program. So that's one way you can use these products. You can use them if you want to use just disarm a couple times foliarly throughout the season for anthracnose management. You can do it too. But like this, I think you cast a real wide net and you get a lot of bang for your buck. Okay, want to talk about some alternative disease management. Unfortunately, you probably didn't see this, but in the Montreal area, like I said, I cover the Quebec market. The city of Montreal has put out a new pesticide ban. It's a lot of fluff because a lot of the products they've banned actually have no applicability in turf. But anyway, it has caused a little bit of a headache for the superintendents there because, as an example, this new ban now, Mecaprop 2,4-D, they're only allowed to use between April 15th and June 15th, which, if you take a herbicide class, you'll learn that fall is actually probably the best time to use herbicides, the most efficacious, but not allowed to use it then. Chlorothalonil only allowed to use between October 15th and December 1. I have a superintendent just south of the island of Montreal. His club has told him he's got 2 years left. Here's a list of 7 products he's allowed to use. Dollar Spot's a huge issue over there. Not one of the 7 products he's allowed to use is labeled for Dollar Spot. And in 2 years, he's got to go like pesticide free. That's what that municipality has told him. So, and it's going to be interesting to hear Jason's talk this afternoon to see what he's hearing because things are starting to, like back when we say back home, Savados in Quebec, things are starting to be moving and shaking going on. And if I remember the cosmetic ban, what was the first municipality in Quebec that started the cosmetic ban? Hudson, that's right, Hudson. Unfortunately, I'm old enough to remember that. I'm getting to that age. But so this is starting. It's going to be interesting to see where things go. We just lost tebuconazole. I'm sure you heard about that. That was a surprise to me. So anyway, we definitely get the sense that we're being pushed to use these more alternative products, which we happen to have 2, which I want to talk about here. Fostrol and Jade. to talk about it for really strong on microdocium patch. So quickly, phosphorol, what is it? It's a mix of 3 different phosphite sources. Okay, registered for anthracnose, pythium blight, and microdocium patch. They're known as plant defense activators, phosphites. They elicit systemic acquired resistance. And the main mechanism of disease control with phosphite fungicides are this plant defense component. Where do we use them? Well, the first disease where it was recognized that phosphites actually had fungicidal properties were on the pythium diseases. Now, we did work 12 years, 13 years ago now with Dr. Vargas on pythium blight. So our 2 rates. Okay, here's our Segway product in the trial. So Segway is like real the one that's going to give you the pythium to knockout. But get some strong suppression with our 2 rates. So if you're in a phosphorol program for, say, anthracnose, which I'll cover just next, just know, have that confidence that you're getting suppression of pythium blight. Here's anthracnose, the cervuli there. They'll work at Rutgers. It gets, yes.
Is that a point preventative or curative?
That's prevented. Well, pythium, you don't want to be going curative with pythium.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I say that, I joke. The reality is a lot of the times pythium blight we are treating curative.
How does it work curative?
Yeah, it works well. But if it's me, my golf course curative, I'm going with like one of the heavy hitters. I've seen pythium blight out there, or a common tank mix is a lot of guys will do like our Segway product, low rate with some phosphorol in there. So you got 2 different modes of action. But that was a preventative trial. But anyway, just if you're on it, you know that I'm covered off. Like I'm getting some strong suppression. Yeah, anthracnose, Rutgers, that's where you go to do anthracnose work. I find it very interesting to see a phosphite fungicide working as well as something like chlorophyll and 2 different formulations of SDHI, panthiopyrite, our Pantheon product. Okay, so you can use it with confidence and really good for anthracnose management. Then finally, microdocium patch, it might be a little bit more of interest to you is we've been doing work at Oregon State since 2018. I mean, I better send Donald Trump a note here. You want to talk about trade imbalance? The amount of money we've been sending to Oregon State since 2018, they haven't sent anything back. But 130 mils overall, in general, 89% control of microdocium patch. That's what we've seen in average. So really good, strong suppression on microdocium patch. But this is something I'm seeing more and more of in my travels. You know what that is? Algae. Yeah. Why are we seeing more algae? Any guesses? What are we using less of? Chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is great at suppressing algae. We're using less of it because of these restrictions. Starting to see more of this. Got good news for you though. Dr. Kaminsky did some work a long time, was that 2015, 2016 now, looking at phosphites. Long story short, as long as your phosphite product has potassium phosphite in it, which fortunately our phosphorol product does, actually in his trial work here, one of the products he used was phosphorol, and just a different trade name in the US, so the exact same product. And it showed to suppress algae to the same degree as chlorophyll. So here's the phosphite treatment. So here's phosphate. So phosphate does nothing on algae suppression, okay? So just consider you're looking at the untreated. So it shows you the degree of suppression. If you're looking at this on its own, you think, oh, it doesn't work. But you got to compare it to the untreated. So you get some strong suppression. So what he found in his research was potassium phosphate. It has to be potassium phosphate. Signature is an excellent product from our friends at MU, but it does not work, does not suppress algae, okay? It has no potassium phosphate in it. That gives you an idea how much you're going to see in terms of the suppression. Want to talk about jade, our mineral oil product? It's a pharmaceutical grade, pigment-free mineral oil. Gets used a lot in food production. The examples I like to use is on bread. You spray it on bread, so when you throw it in that plastic bag, it doesn't stick. Or the other example is gummy bears. When I was a kid, you open up that. When I was a kid, it's 2025, so I think got to watch out for the language and the words we use nowadays. I was a very glandular kid. Is that appropriate? Okay. I used to eat a lot of gummy bears. I used to like gummy bears. But anyway, you open up the bag, the gummy bears don't stick together. But if you rip it in half, that side that you've exposed is now sticky. And you can stick it anywhere. And if you were like me, I used to make the mutant gummy bear. I grew up in like a French-speaking area. We were the only English family on the street. My dad was too cheap to get cable, so we had 2 channels. So that's what I did in my free time. I'd break the gummy bears in half and make these weird colored. No one else did that. Was I the only guy on my out alone on an island? Okay. Let me take that story back. I never did that. Anyway, so used preventatively for micronuclear patch and dollar spot. How does it work? So really fast here, it creates a barrier. Micronuclear patch, dollar spot, the mycelium grows up the leaf blade, gets into the stomata, starts the infection cycle. So if you put a barrier on it, you prevent the infection cycle from starting. We do see dew mitigation, which is kind of cool. Say on average 4 to 5 days. I guarantee you, you've sat through enough presentations where you've seen that disease triangle, that one environmental component. If you have an environment that's less wet, it's less conducive to disease. One comment I do get from superintendent's feedback is, especially in the fall, they like the fact that they're going out, getting nice dry cuts on their greens because it's dew free. The plant defense listeners they trigger ISR as well as phosphates. Okay, so you got 3 modes of action going on. I've sprayed enough of this stuff over the years. I counted enough dollar spot lesions. I can tell you just from my own eyeballs, you get about 50% suppression of dollar spot. But where it shines though is on micronochium patch. Much stronger on micronochium patch. Going back to the trade imbalance here, expect 94% control of micronochium patch with jade. Then the question is, well, what happens if you mix them together? And this is what you get. You get control as good or better than all the other conventional fungicides you've been using today. Okay. This is to date what we've been recommending. 270 mils of jade, so we don't see a rate response above 270 for micronuclear patch. If you go above that, you're wasting your money. 270, 130. Just want to show you a trial in 2022. Unfortunately, this circle is kind of hiding some of it. But anyway, there's that the 130 phosphorol, 270 jade. The big bear had an idea. It's like, well, what happens if we do 130 jade, 130 phosphorol, a little less jade? It's actually working maybe slightly better. And talking to Brian McDonald, who's a guy who does all this spray, the treatments there, he does all the evaluations. He's like, yeah, it appears to be working slightly better than the treatment with more jade. And that's what that looks like. So there's 270 jade, and there's a 130 jade. So already jade 130 phosphorol was already pretty cost effective. But with half the amount of jade, it's just that much more cost effective. Visually seems to be a little bit better and providing the same degree of control in terms of micronuclear patch. So this is just hot off the press for you guys. This trial should be concluding at the end of the month, but we got this about a month ago. Just a progress report. We decided to send more money to the U.S. And our treatment with less jade is working as good or better than the treatment with more jade. So we got 2 positive hits, and that's what that there looks like, 130, 130. So I've seen enough moving forward. My recommendation is going to be 130 jade, 130 phosphorol, no longer 270 jade. It's working as well. We're going to do more research with that, but this is good news. Cost savings for you guys. When can you use it? You hate to throw up a slide and say you can use it at any time. The reality is you can use it at any time. This peg mix, depending upon what you're trying to accomplish. If you're trying to go after anthracnose or summer diseases, you can use it in the summer, get some algae suppression. You can use it in the fall for micronochium patch. So it's just a very versatile mix. But the key for you guys, I feel, is when you mix these two together for micronochium patch, you guys have just created a brand new frac group. Okay, because I hear a lot of comments for micronochium patch. Oh, these other products I've been using don't seem to work as well. They're not working as well as they used to. Well, you can mix these two together. They will work as well as these other groups. Give you a 99% control to close to 100% control, just like those other groups. But the kicker is the chance of developing resistance to these 2 products is extremely low because the main contributor to disease control is the plant defense component. A pathogen is not going to become resistant to plant defense. So this is something that you could spray 2, 3, 4, 5 times, not have to worry about rotating, and you don't have to worry about any kind of resistance. And you can give a break to these overused loops there. So to me, this is a winner chicken dinner. It's good news. Okay, how much time do I have here? 7 minutes. Good. Perfect. So I have still 273 slides to go. So, all right. So I'll just close up with Polaro. talk about a bit of a winter control. Our Polaro fungicide we launched 5 years ago, and thanks to COVID, so not only did COVID take away my sense of taste and smell, but also took away our Polaro. I was talking to my good man here, manufacturing issues. We had problems with locating one of the inerts in the product. And it's crazy because there was 15 other inerts that we could have chosen to put in that product. But to do that, we'd have to re-register the whole product and pass it through PMRA. So it's not like we're throwing a new active. We're just throwing a new surfactant in there, and the PMRA would consider that a new product. So long story short, the way to circumvent all that problem is we've come out with a new formulation. Same thing, just new formulation. It's now Polaro SC. It's a suspension concentrate. So I'm just going to focus on the differentiators of our Polaro product. Okay, they're all excellent products you see here. Okay, Enstrada 2, Dedicate, Insignia. But what is different about Polaro? It's only 7 and 11 combination. That's one thing that's different. And the second is, I was talking about those fungicides that can move up in the plant. It's the only combination where both those fungicides can move up in the plant. Okay, they're both these xylem mobile. Now, I curse the big bear. Back in the day, we used to represent, it's a long story. I'm not going to put you to sleep. But back in the day, before we were Belchim, we were Engage Agro. We had a partnership with Syngenta. All those products like Primo, Banner. You may have heard of a product called Enstrada. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of that one. But Big Bear back in the day was the guy who brought all these products up to Canada. So I blamed him for doing such a good job with Enstrada. So I know for a lot of guys, they tell me, Grover, I've been using Enstrada for 15 years. It's been working for me. Why am I going to change? And I get it. Okay, I get it. But I know a lot of guys also do cleanup sprays or go and clean spray. Well, let me tell you, got some good news. Because Polaro and Enstrada go together like peas and carrots. Polaro, our product here, which is a 7-Eleven, it's the only product that you could use spray before Enstrada. That's the only one that allows you to use 5 different modes of action. Because your Enstrada products are group 3, 12, and M5. This is a 7-Eleven. So you've done 2 applications, 5 different modes of action. You're going after that snow mold pathogen at 5 different biological sites. You can't do that with any other registered snow mold fungicide. If you were to use Dedicate before Enstrada, nothing wrong with Dedicate. Fantastic product from our friends at MBU. If you do Dedicate before, you've done DMI and then DMI in the Enstrada. So it's only 4 different modes of action. And so Dr. Koch, I'm sure you're familiar with Dr. Koch. He's like the leading pathologist when it comes to snow mold research. He will now tell you he no longer recommends DMIs for snow mold control. He's getting away from that. Why? Finding on big snow mold a lot of breakthrough. So if you were to use those 2 applications, you got 2 DMIs there. So that's where I feel the strength of Polaro. For those of you that are, been using Enstrada for a long time, don't want to switch, no problem. Polaro might be a good go and clean application. We have done a lot of work throughout the country, started in 2019. I think we're close to 100 trials, small plot trials that we decided to do, or trials on fairways. I want to highlight some research we did with Dr. Koch. There he is, the master, the guru. We call him the sultan of snow mold. He's out there evaluating all those plots there. But this year, 22-23, there's 120 days of snow cover. And this is the year Dr. Koch called it the bloodbath for fungicides. Even the best fungicides, the best treatments, only provided 80% control. There's still 20% disease. I'm happy to say that Polaro was one of those products that was amongst the best that provided 80% control, okay? But if we look, so here's our old formulation, the one that COVID gave us supply issues. It's dead. Our new formulation works the same. We're also experimenting with a lower rate. Because we know superintendents like to stretch dollars, things are expensive. So a lot of superintendents play with lower rates. So we're playing with an experimental lower rate, and it seems to be working almost as good as the high rate. So more to come on that. Whatever these products are, don't buy those. Don't seem to work. Thought I'd throw in the turf version of Where's Waldo? Where's Polaro? So here's a nice cool drone shot of this. I mean, look at that. So again, the year we call the bloodbath for fungicides. But there's a few different treatments of Polaro in there, but I thought I'd just kind of highlight these 3 because these are the ones I just showed you in the last slide. So here's the 3 plots of Polaro, and then you just see all the death and destruction around it. So it performed really well there. I'll quickly walk you across the country, not to put you to sleep, but British Columbia, there was 133 days of snow, worked well there in the Edmonton area. This was 181 days after application. I love this picture. Still have like water there. God's country. This might be here, actually, I believe. Here's 164 days of snow cover. This was a real industrial superintendent. We even got like drone shots. Thank you. Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, 150 days of snow. Getting to northern Ontario, 77 days of snow. Getting back to La Belle Province, 100 days of snow. Maritimes, can't leave these guys out, 78 days. Just to miss the perfect rectangle there and there. New Brunswick, 83 days of snow. So, point being is, we've done a lot of research. It's worked well in all the provinces across the country. So, lastly, I'm just going to finish up on this. The most frequently asked question that we get is, well, let me take one quick step back. We recommend Polaro. We recommend you add a third active to Polaro for greens. Why? Because it's your greens. That's the only reason why. And in areas in your golf course where you might have high pressure. I'm sure we all have those one area, like one tee deck that's got an extra 3 to 4 weeks of snow, or if there's an area in your golf course where you say, no matter what I use, I always get a bit of breakthrough. So when there's high pressure, throw in a third AI. Other than that, it's worked really well. So then the question we get is, what's the third AI you recommend? We've done a lot of work with chlorothalonil. Works excellent with chlorothalonil, but is chlorothalonil still going to be here 2-3 years? Oh no, we're waiting. Apparently the PMRA is going to put out their decision this month. They're usually a couple months late, but they're saying March. Anyway, so chlorothalonil is one that goes well with Polaro. But we decided to do some more tank mix work. This is up in Muskokas in November 2023. About 50% disease in the untreated plots. So this is what an average untreated plot looked like. There was that full rate of Polaro on its own. There's the experimental low rate, so working pretty good. And now fludeoxonil, working really well, fludeoxonil. Now one quick word of, 10:30. Make sure you rotate your fludeoxonil. The risk of developing resistance to fludeoxonil is not exceedingly high, but relatively high. In my travels, I'm saying it's not uncommon for me to see, folks do 3 applications without rotating. Starting to see some fludeoxonil failure right there. Make sure you're rotating. So fludeoxonil worked really well, and fluazanam also worked really well. So the third AI for Polaro for your greens could either be fludeoxonil, fluazanam, or chlorothalonil. Thank you. That's my 1 hour. So thank you for your time. Any question? I'm here all day. Yeah, that's all I got for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Grover. We'll take about 10 minutes here for a quick break. The sheets for IPM, the CECs, are in the next room, just on the tables there. Mr. Greg Hawes, there's one special sheet just for you out there too, for Ontario. Yeah.